Last night, Governor Walz suggested that because of your Ivy League education and your Silicon backing your political career, that you yourself are part of the elite. What are your first impressions of them trying to frame you this way to the American public?
Well, look, I came from a family where nobody in my family had ever gone to law school. I grew up in a poor family. The fact that Tim Walz wants to turn it into a bad thing, that I actually worked myself through college, through law school, and made something myself, to me, that's the American dream. And if Tim Walz wants to insult it, I think that's frankly pretty bizarre. Now, look, what really bothers me about Tim Walz, it's not even the positions that he's taken, though certainly he has been a far left radical. You know what really bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform? When the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out right before you actually have to go. I also think it's dishonest. Something, again, if you guys ever get an opportunity to ask Tim Walz or Kamala Harris some questions, he made this interesting comment that the Kamala Harris campaign put out there, and I bet they're regretting they put it out there now, because he said that and he was making a point about gun control, he said we shouldn't allow weapons that I used in war to be on America's streets. Well, I wonder, Tim Walz, when were you ever in war? What was this weapon that you carried into war, given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq, and he has not spent a day in a combat zone? What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not. And if he wants to criticize me for getting an Ivy League education, I'm proud of the fact that my mamaw supported me, that I was able to make something of myself. I'd be ashamed if I was him and I lied about my military service like he did.
A few moments later.
Well, here is Tim Walz, who enlisted when he was 17 years old. He served in the National Guard for 24 years. And I'm not aware of any military service that J.D. Vance has ever served. So let's just make the comparison there. And what happened in the tragedy of the killing of George Floyd and then the unrest. Yeah, okay, pardon me for that.
Well, J.D. Vance has criticized him as never having been in combat. And
has he?
Well,
has J.D. Vance been in combat?
Well, I think he was over in Iraq, I think, as a public relations officer, as a communications officer. I think that's the case. But he's also said that this is anti-Semitic, that Josh Shapiro was not chosen because he wasn't against Israel enough.
But let me say this. We have some challenges in our country. As I say all the time, what matters are the kitchen table issues for the American people. What matters is the distinction between the two visions for our country and the experience that has been brought. Joe Biden, 16 million jobs created. I don't like to use his name, but Donald Trump, the worst job creation record since Herbert Hoover.
What about
Walz did make a comment, speaking to a group, he's done it a couple of times, where he has used language that has suggested that he carried weapons in a fighting situation. As you know, with your contact with the military, I know from coming from a military family, there is a difference between being in a combat area, being involved at a time of war, and actually being in a position where people are shooting at you. There is no evidence that at any time Governor Walz was in a position of being shot at, and some of his language could easily be seen to suggest that he was. So that is absolutely false when he said that about gun rights out there.
You have a lot of young people who are concerned about Gaza. You have a lot of Muslims and Arabs and others. They have not felt seen by the Biden administration. But you also have anti-Semitism that has gotten marbled into this party. You can be for the Palestinians without being an anti-Jewish bigot, but there are some anti-Jewish bigots out there. And there's some disquiet now, and there has to be. How much of what just happened is caving into some of these darker parts in the party? So that's going to have to get worked out. It's going to have to get talked through.
I did not say that was the only reason that Kamala Harris didn't choose Josh Shapiro, so you should take a little less DNC talking points when you ask your questions and ask a real question. I have suggested that Kamala Harris was motivated, or at least her party was motivated, by anti-Semitism. And the evidence that I offer for that is what dozens of Democratic activists said in the run-up to her selecting her nominee. There were multiple grassroots activists, multiple media personalities, multiple people with influence in the Democrat Party who suggested that she should not choose Josh Shapiro because of his ethnic background. And look, I don't care what your ethnic background is. I know Donald Trump doesn't care what your ethnic background is. I do not want to live in a country where we're choosing who the next VP is based on skin color or ethnic heritage. Choose based on merit. And the fact that so many prominent leaders in the far left felt empowered to talk about Shapiro's ethnic heritage is a disgrace, and I think it's a scandal for the Democrat Party. Yes, I do.
What does Walz bring to this?
He's cuddly.
And cuddly.
Cuddly?
I think she went for maybe a little more of a cuddly choice.
It tells more about, the texture of the man.
He seems to almost have a twinkle in his eye.
Tim Walz is the opposite of weird.
Tim Walz beats America.
He sounds like, a football coach.
He's a hunter that you could visit with at the hardware store. In a dictionary, if you had weird and anti-weird, you'd have Tim Walz's picture there. I bet knows how to make a good hot dish casserole.
He's very down to earth.
It's his authenticity.
Authentic communicator.
The word joy came up a lot.
He's joyful.
He seems happy.
A happy-go-lucky warrior.
And he's happy and a happy warrior.
The joyful warrior.
He is one happy warrior.
A happy warrior.
He's cuddly, he's happy, he's a warrior, but I wonder, is he affable with a folksy vibe?
Reliable.
Definitely affable.
He is an extremely affable individual.
Very affable, plain-speaking way, a folksy vibe, this folksy idea.
Terrific vibe.
Vibes election.
Kind of a folksy guy.
The idea that Tim Walz is some lefty is just not true.
I don't think either of them are Bernie Sanders progressive. A rather safe pick. I think a safe pick.
The safe choice. This is a do no harm pick. Do no harm.
He's just more of a vanilla pick.
Those outside of Pittsburgh loves Tim Walz. So talk about Walz.
Watching the coach, and I'm going to call him the coach from now until Election Day. Watching the coach yesterday and watching the vice president yesterday, it was mesmerizing in the sense that it's been a while since I've seen a rally like that, either on TV or in person. And watching it, you could just sense the power in the hall. And it was the power of joy, the power of laughter, the power of hope for the future. It's been a long time since any aspect of American politics has put a smile on anyone's face. And these two people yesterday managed to put a smile on the nation's face.
Mesmerizing, joyful, put a smile on the nation's face. Let's have a look at Harris and Walz together.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening.